My name is Reese, and I'm 29. Picture me at my company's glitzy Seattle gala, my navy dress snagging on a velvet chair, crystal chandeliers sparkling above. I didn't know skipping a chat with the CEO's wife, Samantha, would unravel my world. Days later, she stormed our office, her voice sharp, demanding my job for disrespect. My boss, Greg, looked trapped. But I had an email, a secret that could shift everything. Ever been misjudged for just being you? Like and subscribe to hear how I fought back. Where are you watching from? The morning after Samantha's outburst, I sat at my cubicle, the hum of the office coffee machine filling the silence. My desk was a mess of sticky notes and project charts, a half-empty latte cooling beside my keyboard. I was trying to focus typing up a client proposal when my phone buzzed. A text from my sister Harper popped up. Any luck with the tuition loan? I'm freaking out. I sighed, rubbing my temples. Her college fees were a constant weight, and my job was the only way we'd cover them. I typed a quick reply promising to call later when a shadow fell over my desk. Greg stood there, his tie slightly crooked, his usual easy smile gone. He cleared his throat, glancing around like he didn't want anyone to overhear. "Reese, can we talk?" In my office? My stomach twisted. I'd been replaying Samantha's demand all night, hoping it was just a bad dream. I nodded, grabbing my notebook as if it could shield me, and followed him down the hall. His office smelled of leather and old books, the kind of place where big decisions were made. He shut the door, motioning to a chair across from his desk. I sat, my hands clasped tight, noticing the way he avoided my eyes. "Look, Reese," he started, his voice low. "I got an email from Samantha this morning. It's not good." He turned his monitor toward me, and there it was, a wall of text under her name, each word sharper than the last. She called me arrogant, unprofessional, said I'd insulted her at the gala by ignoring her and laughing during her speech. There was even a photo attached me mid-laugh, my head tilted back, captioned, "Proof of her mockery." My breath caught. That moment at the gala, I'd been on a call with a client stepping away to handle a last-minute crisis. The laugh, I was joking with Lila about a spilled drink, not her speech. I looked at Greg, my voice shaky. "This isn't true. I wasn't laughing at her. I was working." He leaned back, rubbing his neck, his face a mix of sympathy and stress. "I know you're solid, Reese, but she's Samantha. She's got influence and she's pushing hard." He paused, then added, "She wants you gone. I haven't decided anything yet, but I need you to understand the pressure I'm under." I stared at the screen, the photo twisting an innocent moment into something ugly. My mind raced back to my hometown, a small place where people judged you by your actions, not your status. Growing up, I'd learned to hold my head high to earn respect through hard work. Samantha's world, all glitz and power plays, felt like a different planet. "Greg," I said, my voice steadier now, "I've given everything to this company. You know that. Can't you just talk to her?" He sighed, looking older than his 40 years. "I'll try, but she's not easy to reason with. Just keep your head down for now. Okay?" I left his office, my notebook untouched, my heart pounding. Back at my cubicle, I sank into my chair, staring at the latte now cold. Lila popped her head over the partition, her curly hair bouncing. "You okay? You look like you saw a ghost." I forced a smile, not ready to spill everything. "Just a rough morning," I said, but her eyes narrowed. She leaned in, whispering, "I heard Samantha was at some fancy event last night talking about you. Said you're nobody who needs to learn your place. Reese, she's got it out for you." My chest tightened. Lila's words confirmed what I'd feared. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was personal. I opened my laptop, trying to focus on work, but Harper's text kept flashing in my mind. If I lost this job, her dreams of finishing college would crumble. I thought of our mom, Diane, working double shifts at the diner to keep us afloat after Dad left. I'd promised myself I'd be the one to break that cycle, to build something stable. Now, one woman's grudge threatened to tear it all down. I clicked on Samantha's email again, reading her words over and over, each one a jab. Arrogant, disrespectful, mockery. How could a single night, a single moment be twisted into this? Lila dropped by again, sliding a granola bar onto my desk. Eat something. You're scaring me. I laughed softly, grateful for her. Thanks, Lila. Just dealing with some stuff. She hesitated, then said, You know Samantha's got Greg wrapped around her finger, right? She's not just his wife. She's got half the board in her pocket. I nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. This wasn't just about me and Samantha. It was about power, and I was caught in the crossfire. As Lila walked away, I unwrapped the granola bar, the crinkle of the foil loud in the quiet cubicle. My screen still glowed with Samantha's email, her words like a bruise I couldn't stop pressing. I closed the laptop, needing air, and headed to the office kitchen. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the counter, where I poured myself a glass of water. My reflection in the glass door looked tired, my brown eyes shadowed. I took a sip, trying to steady myself, when my phone buzzed again. Another text from Harper. Mom's asking if you're okay. She's worried. I groaned softly. Diane always had a sixth sense for trouble, but I wasn't ready to drag her into this mess. Back at my desk, I noticed a new email notification. It was from Greg, marked urgent. My heart sank as I opened it, expecting another blow. Instead, it was a forwarded message from Samantha to the entire leadership team, CCing me by mistake. She wrote about maintaining professionalism and used my name, saying my behavior at the gala set a dangerous precedent. She didn't mention firing me outright, but the implication was clear. I was the problem, and she was rallying support to make sure everyone knew it. My hands trembled as I read the last line. We cannot allow such disrespect to go unaddressed. It felt like a public shaming, and I hadn't even been given a chance to respond. I leaned back in my chair, the office suddenly feeling smaller, the walls closing in. I wanted to march into Greg's office and demand he defend me, but his earlier hesitation told me he was already buckling. Instead, I called Harper, needing her voice to ground me. She picked up on the second ring, her tone bright until she heard mine. Reese, what's wrong? You sound awful. I paced my cubicle, keeping my voice low. It's work. The CEO's wife she's trying to get me fired over nothing. And now she's emailing everyone, making me look like some kind of villain. Harper gasped, then went quiet the way she did when she was thinking hard. That's insane. What are you gonna do? I didn't have an answer. I don't know yet. I can't lose this job, Harp. Not with your tuition, not with everything. She started talking about her professor's advice on standing up to bullies, but I was only half listening. My eyes caught movement outside my cubicle. Ethan, a quiet guy from marketing, lingered nearby, pretending to adjust a poster on the wall. He glanced at me, then quickly looked away, his face unreadable. Had he seen Samantha's email? Was he judging me too? I ended the call with Harper, promising to update her later, and tried to focus on my proposal again. But every keystroke felt heavy, like I was fighting through mud. By lunch, the office vibe had shifted. I walked to the break room, hoping to grab a sandwich from the fridge, but the usual chatter stopped when I entered. Two colleagues, Natalie and Marcus, were at the table, their voices dropping to whispers. Natalie's eyes flicked to me, then back to her phone, her lips pursed. Marcus cleared his throat, muttering something about a meeting, and they both left their sandwiches untouched. I stood there, the fridge door cold against my hand, feeling like an outsider in a place I'd called home for 3 years. Had Samantha's email spread that fast? Or was I just paranoid? I ate alone at my desk, the sandwich tasting like cardboard. Lila texted me. Meet me at the stairwell. Need to tell you something. I slipped out, finding her on the 5th floor landing, her face serious. Reese, I dug around. Samantha's been calling board members, saying you're a liability. She's not just mad, she's on a mission. I leaned against the wall, the concrete cool through my blouse. Why me? I barely know her. Lila shrugged, her voice soft. Maybe you remind her of someone. Or maybe she just doesn't like that you don't kiss up. Her words hit hard, stirring a memory of my high school days when girls like Samantha would ice me out for not fitting their mold. I thanked Lila and headed back, my mind spinning. The day dragged on, each hour heavier than the last. I kept checking my email, dreading another message from Samantha or Greg. When the clock hit 5, I grabbed my bag ready to escape, but a post-it note on my monitor stopped me cold. In sharp, unfamiliar handwriting it read, "She's watching you. Be careful." My pulse raced. Who left this? Was it a warning or a prank? I stuffed the note in my pocket, my resolve hardening. Samantha wasn't just coming for my job, she was trying to break me. But I wasn't going down without a fight. I slipped the anonymous note into my desk drawer, its words looping in my mind like a bad song. The office was emptying out, fluorescent lights flickering as colleagues grabbed their coats. I stayed late staring at my laptop, the proposal I'd been working on now a blur. My phone lit up with a call from Diane, my mom, but I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to explain why I felt like the ground was crumbling beneath me. Instead, I pulled up Samantha's email to the leadership team again, her accusation of my dangerous precedent burning into me. I wanted to scream to tell everyone she was wrong, but who would listen? The next morning, I walked into the office with a forced smile, my coffee cup warm in my hands. The air felt different, thicker, like everyone was watching me. I nodded at Natalie in the hallway, but she looked through me, her heels clicking past. At the coffee machine, I overheard two guys from sales, Marcus and Jared, talking in low tones. "She's on thin ice," Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper. "Samantha's not letting it go." Jared chuckled, then stopped when he saw me. "Morning, Reese," he mumbled, grabbing his mug and bolting. My face burned. The rumors were spreading, and I was becoming a ghost in my own workplace. I settled at my cubicle trying to focus when an email popped up from Catherine in HR. It was about a major client presentation I'd been leading for weeks, a pitch that could land us a multi-million-dollar contract. The message was short. "Reese, the presentation has been reassigned to Tyler. Please hand over all materials by noon." My heart dropped. Tyler was a junior analyst, barely a year in with half my experience. I read the email again, searching for a reason, but there was none. I marched to Catherine's office, my pulse racing, and knocked harder than I meant to. She looked up from her desk, her glasses perched on her nose. "Reese, come in." I closed the door, my voice tight. Why was my presentation reassigned? I've been working on it for months. Catherine sighed, setting down her pen. It came from above. "There were concerns about your reliability given recent events." I blinked, stunned. "Concerns? From who, Samantha?" She didn't answer, but her silence said enough. I leaned forward, gripping the edge of her desk. "This is unfair. You know I'm good at my job." Catherine nodded, her expression softening. "I do, Reese, but my hands are tied. Just give Tyler the files." "Okay," I left her office, my throat tight, feeling like I'd been slapped. Back at my desk, I started boxing up the presentation notes, each folder. A reminder of the late nights I'd poured into this project. Lila stopped by, her eyes wide. "I heard about the pitch. This is messed up." I nodded, too angry to speak. She lowered her voice. "I was at a charity thing last night, some fancy auction Samantha hosted. She was talking about you, Reese, saying she's teaching you a lesson. It's not just about the gala. It's like she's got a vendetta." My stomach churned. "What did I ever do to her?" I whispered. Lila shook her head. "I don't know, but she's not stopping." I handed the files to Tyler, who looked almost guilty taking them. "Thanks, Reese," he said, avoiding my eyes. I forced a nod, but inside I was seething. This wasn't just about my job anymore, it was about my dignity. I called Harper during my lunch break, sitting in my car in the parking lot, the Seattle drizzle smearing my windshield. "It's getting worse," I told her, my voice cracking. "They took my project, Harp. Everyone's acting like I'm already gone." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "You're tougher than this, Reese. Don't let her win." I wanted to believe her, but the weight of it all was crushing me. That afternoon, Samantha showed up at the office unannounced. I was in a team meeting presenting a minor update on another project when she walked in, her designer coat draped over her arm. The room went silent. She stood at the back, her eyes locked on me, a faint smile curling her lips. When I finished, she clapped slowly, the sound sharp in the quiet. "Interesting work, Reese. she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. If only your professionalism matched your enthusiasm. The team stared, some shifting uncomfortably, others looking away. I froze my notes, trembling in my hands, her words cutting deeper than any email. She turned and left her heels echoing down the hall, leaving me exposed and humiliated. The meeting room felt like a vacuum after Samantha's exit, the air sucked out by her parting shot. My colleagues avoided my gaze, flipping through their notebooks or checking their phones. I gathered my papers, my hands unsteady, and walked back to my cubicle, each step heavier than the last. The hum of the office seemed to mock me, a reminder that life was moving on while I was unraveling. I sank into my chair, staring at the blank screen of my laptop, the sting of her words looping in my head. Enthusiasm. She'd turned my passion into a weapon, and no one had said a word to defend me. I opened my email, half hoping for an apology from someone. Anyone but my inbox was empty except for a reminder about the office recycling policy. The irony wasn't lost on me. My career was being trashed, and they were worried about paper bins. I pulled out my phone to text Lila, but stopped. She'd already risked enough digging into Samantha's plans. I didn't want to drag her deeper into this mess. Instead, I scrolled to Diane's voicemail from last night, hitting play. Her voice was soft, tinged with worry. "Reese, call me. I know something's up. You don't have to go through it alone." I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to cry. She'd always been my rock, but this felt too big, too raw to share. By mid-afternoon, the office gossip had metastasized. I caught Ethan whispering to Natalie near the printer, their voices hushed, but their glances loud. When I passed, they stopped Ethan, offering a weak smile that didn't reach his eyes. I kept walking, my chest tight, and ducked into the stairwell for a moment of quiet. The concrete walls were cold, the faint echo of my breathing the only sound. I leaned against the railing, replaying Samantha's public jab, the team's silence, the reassigned presentation. It wasn't just my job at stake. It was my place here, the trust I'd built, the person I thought I was. My phone buzzed, pulling me back. It was a text from Harper. "Just got off with Mom. She says you should apologize to that woman. Says it's not worth losing your job." I stared at the words, a mix of anger and hurt flaring in my gut. Diane meant well, but she didn't get it. Apologizing to Samantha would be admitting I was wrong, that I deserved this. I'd watched my mom swallow her pride too many times, taking extra shifts, smiling through customers' insults just to keep us fed. I'd sworn I'd never do that, never let someone walk over me to feel bigger. But now, with my livelihood on the line, her advice felt like a betrayal, a reminder of how alone I was in this fight. I returned to my desk, determined to push through the day, but the hits kept coming. An email from Greg landed, asking me to step back from a team brainstorming session scheduled for tomorrow. No explanation, just a polite request that felt like a slap. I pictured him typing it, his brow furrowed, torn between his loyalty to Samantha and his guilt over me. I wanted to storm his office to demand why he was letting her dismantle my career, but the memory of his tired eyes in our last meeting stopped me. He was crumbling under her pressure, and I was collateral damage. That evening I stayed late again, the office dark except for the glow of my desk lamp. I was updating a project timeline, trying to prove I was still valuable, when my phone rang. It was Diane, her voice sharper this time. "Reese, why haven't you called Harper, told me about your job? You can't just ignore this." I gripped the phone, my patience fraying. "Mom, I'm not ignoring it, but I'm not groveling to someone who's lying about me." She sighed, the sound heavy with years of hard choices. "Sometimes you have to bend, honey. Pride doesn't pay the bills." I bit my lip, tears welling up. "I can't, Mom. Not this time." We hung up, the silence louder than her words. I packed up my movements slow and headed to my car. The Seattle night was damp, streetlights reflecting off wet pavement. As I unlocked my door, I noticed a figure across the parking lot, Samantha standing by her sleek black SUV, talking on her phone. Her laugh carried sharp and carefree, like she hadn't just torn my world apart. She didn't see me, but I saw her, and the sight of her ease while I was drowning lit a fire in me. I climbed into my car, my hands shaking on the wheel, knowing this wasn't over. She thought she could bury me, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. The rain was relentless that afternoon, drumming against the windows of Greg's office as I stepped inside. His desk was cluttered with papers, a half-drunk coffee mug perched precariously on the edge. He looked worn, his shirt sleeves rolled up his eyes, heavy with something like dread. I'd been called in after lunch, my heart pounding since his curt email. "We need to talk. Now." I shut the door behind me. The click loud in the quiet, and sat across from him. The air felt thick, like the moment before a storm breaks. "Reese," he started, his voice low, almost apologetic. "I've tried to hold this off, but Samantha's made it clear. She wants you out. I'm sorry, but I have to let you go." His words hit like a punch, stealing my breath. I'd known this was coming, felt it in the whispers, the sidelong glances, the slow erosion of my place here. But hearing it final and cold was different. My hands gripped the armrests, my nails digging into the wood, anchoring me as the room spun. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay even. "Greg, before you say anything else, check your email." He frowned, his brow creasing, but he turned to his computer, clicking open his inbox. I watched his face, my pulse racing, as he found the message I'd sent an hour ago, titled simply, "Listen to this." Attached was a file, a voicemail I'd been holding on to like a lifeline. He hesitated, then clicked play, and Samantha's voice filled the room, sharp and unmistakable. "I don't care who she thinks she is," she said, her tone venomous. "Reese is nothing, a nobody who needs to be put in her place. She reminds me of that assistant I got rid of years ago, always acting above her station. I'll make sure she's gone, and Greg will do what I say." The recording caught her laugh, brittle and cruel, followed by her mocking my cheap dress and small-town drawl. My cheeks burned, hearing it not from shame but from the raw exposure of her hate. Greg's eyes widened, his hand frozen on the mouse, his face draining of color. I leaned forward, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "That's from the charity auction last week." She didn't know she was being recorded. Greg looked at me, then back at the screen like he couldn't process it. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. "A friend overheard her. They thought I deserved to know the truth." I didn't name Lila, not yet. She'd risked everything slipping me that file, and I wasn't about to throw her under the bus. The voicemail looped Samantha's words, echoing each one a nail in the coffin of her vendetta. I watched Greg's jaw tighten, his hands clenching into fists. For the first time I saw anger in him, not at me but at the woman he'd been bending to. I wanted to feel triumphant, but all I felt was a hollow ache. This wasn't just about proving her wrong, it was about how much she'd taken from me, how she'd turned my colleagues, my work, my sense of self into a battlefield. I opened my mouth to say more, but the door swung open, and there she was. Samantha in a tailored gray coat, her hair perfect despite the rain. She didn't knock, didn't pause, just strode in like she owned the place. Her eyes locked on me, narrowing, and I felt the weight of her disdain heavier than ever. "Greg, I hope you're handling this," she said, her voice smooth, but edged like a blade wrapped in silk. She hadn't seen the email, didn't know about the voicemail still playing softly on his speakers. Greg looked up, his face a mask of shock, and I braced myself, my heart thundering, knowing this moment was about to explode. Samantha's gaze flicked from me to Greg, her smile tightening as she registered the tension. The voicemail looped faintly, her own voice betraying her, but she didn't seem to hear it yet. She stepped closer, her perfume sharp in the stuffy office, and planted her hands on Greg's desk. "Well," she pressed, her tone clipped. "Have you told her yet? Or do I need to do it myself?" My stomach lurched, but I stayed silent, my eyes fixed on Greg. His face was a storm jaw, clenched fingers twitching toward the keyboard. He muted the voicemail, the sudden quiet deafening, and looked at Samantha, his voice low. "You should listen to something first." She frowned, tilting her head, but before he could restart the file, she turned to me, her eyes blazing. "You," she said, her voice rising, "have no business sitting here like you belong. You're a liability, Reese, and I'm done pretending otherwise. Her words cut deep, each one a public execution in the small room, and I felt my resolve waver, my hands trembling in my lap. Greg stood his chair scraping the floor and held up a hand. "Samantha, stop." But she didn't. She leaned toward me, her voice dropping to a venomous hiss. "You think you're untouchable because you're good at your little spreadsheets? I've seen girls like you before, small-town nobodies who think they can play in my world. You laughed in my face at the gala, and now you'll pay for it." My throat tightened, memories of her icy stare that night flooding back, but I hadn't laughed at her. I'd been juggling a crisis trying to keep the company afloat while she sipped champagne. I wanted to speak to tell her she was wrong, but my voice caught trapped behind a wall of shock and hurt. Greg clicked the voicemail again, and this time her words filled the room loud and clear. "Reese is nothing. I'll make sure she's gone." Samantha froze, her face paling, her eyes darting to the speakers. For a split second, I saw panic in her, a crack in her polished armor, but it vanished as quickly as it came. She straightened, her laugh sharp and forced. "That's edited. You think you can trap me with some fake recording?" She turned to Greg, her voice rising. "She's manipulating you, Greg. Fire her now, or I'll make sure the board hears about your incompetence." My heart pounded, her lie so bold it stole my breath. I looked at Greg, pleading silently for him to see through her, but his eyes were locked on her, his expression unreadable. The room felt like it was shrinking, the walls pressing in the rain outside, a relentless roar. I thought of Lila risking her job to get me that recording of Harper, counting on my paycheck, of Diane's voice urging me to bend. And now Samantha was rewriting the truth, painting me as the villain in a story she controlled. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a cruel whisper meant only for me. "You'll never work in this city again. I'll make sure of it." Her threat landed like a physical blow, my chest aching as I pictured my future crumbling, Harper dropping out, Diane working herself sick, my dreams of stability gone. Greg's silence was a knife, his hesitation louder than Samantha's taunts. I wanted to scream, to fight, but I was frozen, the weight of her words, her power, her hate crushing me. I sat there, exposed, my world splintering with no way out in sight. I left Greg's office with Samantha's threat ringing in my ears, her promise to ruin me echoing like a drumbeat. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, smearing the windows of the office building as I stumbled back to my cubicle. My legs felt like lead, but something inside me was shifting, a spark flickering in the wreckage of her words. I wasn't nothing. I wasn't a nobody. And I wasn't going to let her write the end of my story. I sat at my desk, the office dark and empty, and opened my laptop. My hands were steady now, fueled by a quiet fire. I started drafting an email to the entire team, not to accuse Samantha, but to tell my truth. My fingers flew across the keys, words pouring out. I wrote about my commitment to our projects, my late nights perfecting proposals, my belief in our shared goals. I didn't name her, didn't need to. I let my work speak, let my integrity stand tall. I've always believed in doing what's right, I typed, even when it's hard. I hope you know me by my actions, not rumors. I read it twice, my heart pounding, then saved it as a draft. I'd send it tomorrow after sleeping on it, but writing it felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The next morning I walked into the office with a purpose I hadn't felt in weeks. The air was still heavy with whispers, but I held my head high, my coffee cup warm in my hand. I headed straight to HR, where Catherine was sorting files at her desk. She looked up surprised as I closed the door. "Reese, what's on your mind?" she asked, her tone cautious. I took a breath, my voice calm but firm. "I want to propose a new policy, a way to protect people from being targeted unfairly, like what's been happening to me." Her eyebrows rose, but she nodded, motioning for me to sit. I pulled out a notebook, pages filled with notes I'd scribbled at midnight. I outlined a plan: anonymous reporting channels, mandatory training on workplace respect, clear consequences for abuse of power. My voice grew stronger with each point, the weight of Samantha's words fading as I spoke. Catherine listened, jotting down notes, her face thoughtful. "This is bold," she said finally, "but it's needed. I've seen too many people hurt by politics here." Her words caught me off guard, a hint of her own story behind them. I nodded, grateful for an ally, and left her office feeling lighter, like I'd planted a seed. By noon, I was at a corner coffee shop, the smell of espresso grounding me as I met Lila. She slid into the booth across from me, her eyes wide with worry. "Reese, are you okay?" After yesterday, I smiled, a real one, and leaned forward. "I'm not okay yet, but I'm fighting back. I'm drafting something for the team, and I just pitched a policy to Catherine." Lila's jaw dropped. Then she grinned. "That's my girl. But Samantha's not going to like this." I nodded, sipping my latte. "I know. That's why I need your help." I showed her my email draft on my phone, and we spent an hour refining it, choosing words that were honest but not vindictive. Lila suggested adding a line about teamwork, something to remind everyone we were stronger together. As we worked, I felt a surge of gratitude for her courage in getting me that voicemail. She didn't owe me that risk, but she'd taken it anyway. "You're gonna make waves," she said, her voice soft but proud. I nodded, my resolve hardening. Waves were exactly what I wanted. Back at the office, I ran into Ethan in the hallway, his usual shy demeanor replaced with something like guilt. "Reese," he said, his voice low, "I heard about the meeting. I should have said something when Samantha went off. I just froze." His admission stung, but it also lit a fire. "It's not too late." I told him, my tone gentle but firm. "Speak up next time. We all need to." He nodded, his face flushed, and I walked away feeling the first stirrings of a bigger fight, one that wasn't just about me anymore. As I left the coffee shop with Lila, the Seattle sky was clearing, patches of blue breaking through the clouds. My phone buzzed with a new text from Harper. "You got this, sis. Show them who you are." Her words settled into me, a reminder of why I was fighting, not just for my job, but for her, for Diane, for the version of myself I'd promised to become. Back at the office, I finalized the team email, my cursor hovering over the send button. My heart raced, but I clicked it, watching the message vanish into the ether. It was out there now. My truth laid bare for everyone to see. I didn't stop there. I scheduled a meeting with the project team when I'd lead myself to rebuild the trust Samantha had fractured. In the conference room, I set up a whiteboard, scribbling ideas for our next campaign. When the team filed in, their faces were a mix of curiosity and caution. Natalie sat in the back, arms crossed, but Ethan took a front seat, his notebook open. I took a deep breath, my voice steady. "I know things have been tense lately," I said, meeting their eyes. "But we're here to do great work together. Let's focus on that." I walked them through my vision, asking for their input, listening as they shared ideas. Slowly, the room warmed, voices, overlapping, laughter breaking through. Natalie even chimed in, her tone softer than before. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Later that day, I made a harder choice. I requested a private meeting with Samantha, not at the office, but at a neutral spot, a quiet bookstore cafe across town. I arrived early, claiming a table by the window, the smell of old books and fresh coffee calming my nerves. When she walked in, her posture stiff, I stood, offering a small nod. She sat, her eyes guarded, and I spoke first, my voice low but clear. "Samantha, I don't know why you targeted me, but your actions hurt. They hurt me, my team, this company. I'm not here to fight you. I just want you to see the damage." She didn't respond. Her lips pressed tight, but I saw a flicker in her eyes. Surprise maybe, or shame. I didn't push for an apology, didn't expect one. I'd said what I needed to, and that was enough. When I got back to the office, a surprise was waiting. On my desk was a handwritten note, the paper crisp, Samantha's name signed at the bottom. "Reese, I regret how things escalated. Let's move forward." It was curt, impersonal, and I knew it wasn't genuine. I tucked it away, my focus shifting to something bigger. I met with Catherine again, this time with a polished proposal for the anti-bullying policy. I'd added real examples without names of how power imbalances had hurt the team, drawing from whispers I'd heard in the break room. Catherine read it, her pen tapping the desk. "This could change things," she said, her voice warm. "I'm taking it to the board." I nodded, a quiet pride blooming in my chest. That evening, I sat with Harper over takeout at my apartment, the city lights twinkling outside. She was scrolling through her phone, her eyes wide. Reese, check this out. People are sharing your email on social media. They're calling you a badass for standing up. I laughed, but the weight of it hit me. My story was spreading, touching strangers, sparking conversations about fairness. I opened my laptop, drafting a post about workplace justice, my fingers steady. Harper helped me polish it, her excitement contagious. When I hit publish, I felt a rush, not of victory, but of purpose. The next day I walked into the office and noticed a shift. Colleagues nodded at me in the hallway, their smiles tentative but real. Ethan stopped by my cubicle, his voice low. Your email, it made me think. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I met his gaze, seeing his sincerity. You're speaking now, I said, and he smiled, a real one. I turned back to my work, the office hum familiar again, but different. I wasn't the same Reese who'd sat frozen under Samantha's glare. I'd found my voice, and I wasn't letting it go. As the day ended, I stood by my desk, slipping my laptop into my bag. The office was quiet, the last of the team gone. I glanced at the note from Samantha still tucked in my drawer and left it there. I didn't need her words to move forward. I stepped into the elevator, the doors closing with a soft thud, and caught my reflection in the metal. My eyes were clear, steady, alive. I'd started something, and I was ready to see it through. 3 months had passed since I sent that email, since I sat across from Samantha in that bookstore cafe and spoke my truth. The office felt different now, not warmer exactly, but steadier, like a ship righting itself after a storm. I walked through the halls, my laptop bag slung over my shoulder, and noticed small shifts. A nod from Marcus in the break room, a quick smile from Catherine as she passed. My proposal for the anti-bullying policy had been approved, and last week, HR rolled out the first anonymous reporting system. I'd seen the flyers on the bulletin board printed in bold blue ink, promising a safer workplace. It wasn't perfect, but it was real and it was mine. I settled at my desk, the morning light filtering through the blinds, and opened my email. A message from Greg caught my eye. Subject line: promotion discussion. My breath hitched. I clicked it, scanning the words. Your leadership has been invaluable. We'd like to offer you the role of senior project manager. I leaned back, my hands still on the keyboard, a quiet thrill running through me. The promotion meant more than a title. It was proof I'd held my ground, that my work still mattered. I wanted to call Harper to hear her cheer, but I held off, letting the moment sink in. At lunch, I slipped into the break room, grabbing a yogurt from the fridge. 2 colleagues, Jared and Sierra, were at the table, their voices low. They didn't stop talking when I walked in, a small victory. Jared looked up, his tone casual. Heard about your policy thing, Reese. That's pretty cool. Sierra nodded, stirring her coffee. Yeah, it's about time someone shook things up. Their words were simple, but they landed like a gift, a sign the tide was turning. I smiled, murmuring a thanks, and sat at my desk. The yogurt untouched, my mind racing with what this meant. Not everyone was on board. I'd caught Natalie's sharp glances in meetings, her comments clipped when we collaborated. She hadn't said anything outright, but her silence spoke volumes, a reminder that change didn't come without friction. I wondered if she resented the spotlight on my efforts, or if she saw me as a threat now. It stung, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the bigger picture. The policy was live. The promotion was real, and I was still here, standing taller than I'd ever thought possible. That evening, I hosted a family dinner at my apartment, the smell of roasted chicken filling the small space. Harper set the table, her chatter about her latest art project a welcome distraction. Diane poured wine, her eyes softer than they'd been in months. As we sat, Harper raised her glass, grinning. To Reese for kicking butt and taking names. I laughed, but Diane's smile was quieter, her gaze searching. I'm proud of you, she said, her voice low. But are you okay? Really, I nodded, but her question lingered, stirring a restlessness I couldn't name. Samantha hadn't been seen at the office since our meeting, but rumors swirled she was planning a return, whispering to board members from the sidelines. The thought of her circling, waiting, tightened my chest. After dinner, I cleared the plates, the clink of dishes grounding me. Harper lingered, helping dry the silverware. You're different now. she said, her tone thoughtful. Stronger, but I don't know, heavier too. Her words hit close, mirroring the unease I'd been carrying. I'd won battles, my job, the policy, respect, but the fight had left scars, a quiet fear that Samantha's shadow wasn't gone. I hugged Harper, her warmth steadying me, but as I turned off the kitchen light, the apartment felt too still, the silence pressing against me, heavy with what might come next. The next morning I walked into the office, the weight of Harper's words still clinging to me. The hallways were busy, keyboards, clacking phones buzzing, but I felt a subtle shift in the air, like a room holding its breath. I'd grown used to the nods, the small gestures of respect, but today something was off. I caught Sierra glancing at me in the break room, her eyes darting away when I met them. Marcus, usually quick with a joke, mumbled a greeting and hurried past. I told myself it was nothing, just a busy day, but my gut said otherwise. At my desk, I found a new email from a local journalist, Mia, asking to interview me about the workplace policy. "Your story's inspiring," she wrote. "People need to hear it." My first instinct was pride, a flicker of hope that my fight could ripple beyond these walls. But as I typed a reply agreeing to meet, I noticed Natalie at the next cubicle, her posture stiff, her typing louder than usual. She didn't look at me, but her silence was sharp, a blade wrapped in routine. I wondered what she'd heard, what she thought of me now. Was it jealousy or something deeper, midday? Ethan stopped by, his voice hushed. "Reese, I need to tell you something." We stepped into the stairwell, the concrete cool against my back. He shifted uneasy. I overheard Natalie talking to Tyler. "She's not happy about your promotion. Said you're stealing the spotlight, and it's unfair." His words landed like a stone, heavy but not surprising. I nodded, my throat tight. "Thanks for the heads up." He hesitated, then added, "I told her she's wrong. You earned this." His support was a lifeline, but it didn't erase the sting of Natalie's resentment, a reminder that every step forward came with a cost. That afternoon, I led a training session on the new policy, standing before a small group in the conference room. The slides clicked through, detailing reporting procedures, but I felt the room's pulse, some engaged, others distant. Natalie sat in the back, her pen tapping, her eyes fixed on her notebook. When I asked for questions, she raised her hand, her voice cool. "How do we know this won't just stir up drama?" The question wasn't unfair, but her tone was, and the room tensed, waiting for my response. I kept my voice even. "It's about accountability, not drama. We're building trust." She nodded, but her smile was thin, a challenge unspoken. After the session, I retreated to my car, needing space. My phone buzzed, a voicemail from Mia, the journalist confirming our interview. Her enthusiasm should have lifted me, but I felt heavy, drained by the undercurrents I couldn't control. I drove home, the city a blur of lights, and found another surprise waiting. A note slipped under my door, unsigned in neat black ink. "Your policy's a start, but some scars don't heal." My breath caught. Was it from a colleague? Someone helped by the policy? Or a warning? I tucked it away, my mind spinning. At my apartment, I sank onto the couch, the quiet pressing in. I thought of Diane's pride, Harper's faith, Ethan's quiet stand. But I also saw Natalie's cold eyes, Sierra's averted gaze, the anonymous note's cryptic weight. Samantha's absence didn't mean peace. Her influence lingered, a ghost in the office's corners. I'd change things, yes, but at what cost? My victories felt fragile, overshadowed by new tensions, new doubts. I stared at the ceiling, the city humming outside, and felt a quiet ache, a sense of standing alone on a ledge, unsure if I'd climb higher or fall. The park near my apartment was quiet that Sunday morning, the kind of stillness that feels like a gift. I walked along the gravel path, my sneakers crunching softly, the air crisp with the promise of fall. Kids laughed on a distant playground, their voices carrying like music, and I paused by a bench, watching leaves drift from an oak tree. My hands were tucked in my jacket pockets, my breath visible in the cool air. For the first time in months, I wasn't rushing, wasn't bracing for the next blow. I sat, pulling out a small journal I'd started keeping, its pages filled with scattered thoughts, a map of where I'd been. I wrote about the office, how the new policy was settling in, how Ethan had started speaking up in meetings, his voice stronger each time. I wrote about Natalie too, how her sharp edges had softened last week when she'd asked me for feedback on a project, her tone almost shy. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was something, a crack in the wall between us. My pen moved faster, tracing the shape of my days, the promotion, the journalist's interview, the way Harper's eyes lit up when she talked about her art. But I also wrote about the quiet fears, the moments I'd wake at night wondering if Samantha's silence was just a pause, not an end. The act of writing grounded me, each word a step toward clarity. I looked up, noticing a squirrel darting across the path, its cheeks stuffed with acorns. I smiled, the simplicity of it easing something in me. I'd been so caught in the fight, Samantha's venom, the office's judgment, that I'd forgotten how to just be. I flipped to a blank page and started a new entry, not about work, but about me. I wrote about the girl I'd been at 16, awkward and fierce, dreaming of a life bigger than my small town. That girl hadn't known she'd face someone like Samantha, but she'd known how to keep going. My phone buzzed, pulling me back. It was a text from Lila. Got a big meeting Monday. Thinking of pitching for team lead. You inspired me. I grinned, typing a quick reply. You'll kill it. Let me know how it goes. Her message stayed with me, a reminder that my fight had sparked something in her too. I tucked the journal away, my fingers brushing the worn cover, and stood stretching in the sunlight. The park felt alive, the world steady beneath my feet, and I carried that feeling back to my apartment, a quiet strength settling in my bones. That evening, I climbed to the office rooftop, after hours, a place I discovered during a late-night work session. The city sprawled below, a tapestry of lights against the dusk. I leaned against the railing, the metal cool under my palms, and let my mind wander. I thought of Diane, how she'd called yesterday, her voice softer than usual. I was wrong to push you to apologize, she'd said, her words heavy with regret. You did what I never could. I'd listened, my throat tight, and told her I understood that her sacrifices had shaped me. We'd hung up closer, the distance between us smaller than it had been in years. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a photo Harper had sent, a sketch she'd done of me, my face calm, my eyes steady. She'd captioned it, "My hero." I stared at it, the lines of her pencil capturing something I was only starting to see in myself. I wasn't the same Reese who'd walked into that gala unsure and unguarded. I'd faced a storm and come out stronger, not because I'd won, but because I'd chosen to stand. The rooftop was quiet, the city humming below, and I closed my eyes, letting the moment hold me a breath before the next step. The rooftop air was cool, the Seattle skyline a soft glow against the deepening night. I lingered by the railing, my hands tracing the metal's smooth edge, my mind quieter than it had been in months. I didn't hate Samantha anymore, not really. She'd been a mirror showing me my own strength, my own flaws. I wrote about it in my journal later, sitting cross-legged on my couch, the lamp casting a warm circle around me. I didn't need her to hurt for me to heal. The next day, I organized a team lunch on the rooftop, a simple gathering with sandwiches and soda, the kind of thing we hadn't done in ages. I watched my colleagues relax, their laughter mingling with the breeze. Ethan shared a story about his dog, Natalie passed around chips, and Lila sketched the skyline on a napkin. I didn't lead the conversation, didn't need to. I just sat listening, feeling the threads of trust weaving back together. When Natalie caught my eye, she offered a small nod, her usual sharpness gone. It wasn't an apology, but it was enough. That evening I called Harper, curling up on my balcony with a mug of tea. The city hummed below, a distant pulse. "How's my artist doing?" I asked, and she laughed, launching into a story about her latest painting. I listened, her voice a tether to the life we were building. When she asked about work, I told her about the rooftop lunch, about the policy gaining traction. "You sound calm," she said, almost surprised. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "I'm getting there," I said, and meant it. I thought of Diane too, how our last talk had mended something between us. I'd mailed her a photo from the lunch, scribbling on the back, "We're okay." She'd texted me a heart, her way of saying she saw me, really saw me. It was small, but it mattered. I sipped my tea, the steam curling in the cool air, and let my mind drift to a memory not of Samantha, not of the office, but of me at 20 packing my car to leave my hometown. I'd been scared then, unsure if I'd make it in a city like this. But I had. I was still here. The next morning I got an email from a headhunter offering a flashy job at a bigger firm, more money, more prestige. I read it twice, my finger hovering over the reply button. It was tempting, a chance to leave the scars of this year behind. But I closed the email, my decision clear. This place, these people, this fight, they were mine. I'd stay not because I had to, but because I chose to. I walked to work, the streets familiar under my feet, and felt a quiet certainty settle in like a stone smoothed by a river. Back at the office, I found a sticky note on my desk, Natalie's handwriting unmistakable. Thanks for the lunch. It was nice. I tucked it into my drawer next to the anonymous note from months ago and sat down, my laptop humming to life. The office was alive around me, phones ringing, voices overlapping. I looked out the window, the sky a pale winter blue, and took a slow breath. I wasn't chasing anymore, wasn't running. I was right where I needed to be, whole in a way I hadn't known I could be. A year later, I'm sitting in my apartment, the soft hum of my laptop filling the quiet. The space is different now, plants line the windowsill, their green leaves catching the morning light, and a small bookshelf holds my journals. Each one a piece of this journey. My name is Reese, still 29, but I'm not the same woman who stood trembling in Greg's office facing a storm I didn't see coming. I've carved out a new rhythm, one that feels like mine. Every Sunday I walk to a farmer's market, picking out fresh herbs, chatting with vendors about their day. Its simple grounding's a reminder that life goes on, steady and real. I'm recording a podcast now, something I started after that journalist's interview went viral in our little Seattle circle. The mic sits on my desk, a cheap one I bought secondhand, but it's enough. I lean in, my voice steady, talking about resilience, about standing up when the world tries to push you down. I don't sugarcoat it. Hurt lingers, scars fade slow, but I share how I found my way through. Listeners email me, strangers with their own stories of unfair bosses, of fights they thought they'd lose. Their words keep me going, a quiet connection across distance. Work is different too. I'm a senior project manager now, leading a team that feels like family even on tough days. Greg's become a mentor, stopping by my desk with coffee, asking my thoughts on new initiatives. Last week he pulled me aside, his eyes serious. "You changed this place, Reese. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I nodded, no need for more words. The policy I fought for is standard now, and last month a junior staffer told me she'd use the anonymous reporting line to call out a toxic manager. Her shy smile was worth every battle. At home, I've built rituals that anchor me. I cook dinner most nights, simple things like pasta with garlic and lemon, the act of chopping herbs calming my mind. Harper visits often, her laughter filling the apartment as she shows me her latest sketches. She's graduating soon. Her tuition covered, a weight lifted from us both. Diane comes too, bringing her famous peach cobbler. Her hugs longer than they used to be. We talk about small things, her garden, my plants, the weather, but it's enough. We found a new ease, a trust rebuilt on honesty. I've stopped looking over my shoulder, waiting for Samantha's next move. She's faded from the office, her name rarely mentioned, though I hear she's hosting galas elsewhere, her world untouched by mine. I don't wish her ill. She was a lesson, not a villain, and I've let her go. My days are full now, not with fighting, but with living meetings, market walks, podcast nights. I'm not perfect, not fearless. Some mornings I wake with a knot in my chest, old doubts whispering. But I breathe through it, water my plants, and step into the day. This morning I'm sipping coffee, the mug warm in my hands as I prepare for another recording. The script is loose, just notes about finding strength in small choices. I think of the listeners, I'll reach the ones who feel alone in their struggles. I want them to know they're enough just as they are. I set the mug down, the steam curling upward, and take a slow breath, the world outside my window soft and steady, ready for whatever comes next. As I shut off the podcast mic, the apartment falls quiet, the hum of the city a faint pulse outside. I lean back my chair creaking and glance at a framed photo on my desk. Harper Diane and me at her graduation, our smiles wide under a gray Seattle sky. That day we danced in the rain, our shoes soaked, laughing until our sides ached. It's a memory I hold close, a reminder of what endures. I've learned to collect these moments to let them outweigh the shadows of harder days. I walk to my kitchen pulling out a notebook, not my journal, but a fresh one for letters I never send. Tonight I write to my younger self, the 20-year-old who arrived in this city with a beat-up suitcase and big dreams. You'll face storms, I write, but you'll find your way. You're enough, always were. The words flow simple but heavy, and I realize I'm not just writing to her, I'm writing to anyone who's ever felt small, who's ever stood trembling before a fight they didn't choose. I close the notebook, my fingers lingering on its cover, and feel a quiet shift like a door unlocking inside me. Yesterday I ran into Lila at a downtown cafe, her new team lead badge pinned proudly to her bag. We hugged, ordered iced teas, and talked about her plans, her voice bright with possibility. She thanked me not for the policy or the fight, but for showing her she could step up too. Her words stayed with me, a ripple I hadn't expected. I think of the anonymous note I got months ago, the one thanking me for the policy, and I wonder who wrote it, what they're building now. My choices, small as they seem, touched lives I'll never fully know. I've learned something through all this, something that took root in the wreckage and grew. It's not about winning, not about proving someone wrong or right. It's about standing tall for yourself, not to conquer, but to live true. I used to think strength meant never bending, never hurting, but I was wrong. Strength is getting up bruised and tired, and choosing to walk forward anyway. It's forgiving those who hurt you, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. I carry that now, a quiet compass, guiding me through days both bright and gray. I step onto my balcony, the night air cool against my skin. The city stretches out, its lights steady, unyielding. I think of the listeners who'll hear my podcast, the ones who'll nod along feeling seen. I hope they find their own compass, their own way to stand. My life isn't perfect, bills pile up. Doubts creep in, but it's mine, built on choices I can live with. I lean against the railing, the stars faint above, and breathe, knowing I'm home in myself no matter what comes next. What's a moment that made you stand taller, that showed you your own strength? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. If this resonated, give it a like, subscribe, or share it with someone who needs it. Thank you for listening, for being here. Here's to finding peace in our fights, to building lives we're proud of. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.